Coming up on today's Locked On Senators, it's time to go to the market. We're going window shopping, looking for a goalie that can bring stability to the crease in Ottawa.
And speaking of goalies, we have our first goalie in our rankings for 2023 NHL Draft Prospect Profiles. It's Michael Hrabel, and we have Cohen Zimmer and Anton Wahlberg.
Lots of great prospects to discuss. Plus, the 2023 Hockey Hall of Fame class will be announced today. Could another former Senator be getting the call to the Hall? That's all coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Senators podcast. It's your team every day.
Your Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
I'm Jake Sanderson, and you're listening to Locked On Senators podcast.
I'm Tim Stützle, and you're listening to the Locked On Senators podcast.
Welcome inside episode 825 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains. Please like and subscribe wherever you download your podcasts, including on YouTube, where the road to 6,000 is underway. We've seen a nice boost, so keep it coming. Be a friend, tell a friend, and subscribe so you can be the first to know when new videos go live, which will include a complete 4+ hour mock draft with special guests coming this Saturday. Today's episode is also brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. The FanDuel Sportsbook is the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. Today is Wednesday, June 21st, and Pilsy, we got to wish a happy 38th birthday to one of our best friends of the show, former Senators defenseman Mark Mathot.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy birthday to Meth. We can't tell everyone how much we appreciate the time he gives us on this show, and especially anytime we have Meth on the show, Ross, it's one of those shows where the prep notes, blank page. Let's just hit record and shoot the shit and see what happens.
Oh, always a great time. And for those asking, hey, where did Meth go? Well, one, kids are out of school, so he's a little bit busier now with the Rugrats flying around. Also, we're in draft mode right now. We're either going to get him on the live stream that's planned for right before the draft next Wednesday, get his memories of being drafted back in, I want to say he was 2003. And
I think so.
That's the best draft of all time. So no wonder. Sixth round pick. Mark thought. So be good to get his thoughts on that. Or we're going to save it right after the draft. We'll get him on. And we are going to plan to sit down with him when we go to Ottawa as well. So hopefully we can make that all happen. So happy birthday to Meth. But Pilsy, Mathot, most of his career had Craig Anderson in goal for the Senators. He was lucky. Brought a ton of stability to the position. The Sens have been searching for that ever since. They took a swing on Matt Murray, so much so they gave him a 4-year extension that could maybe be bought out. We're still waiting to hear that.
By a different team?
Yeah, exactly. By a rival team, even better.
Yes.
And then you're looking at Cam Talbot, just simply didn't work. He had some very high highs. He had some very low lows. Can the Senators find something in between? Because they need stability going into it. We went through it yesterday. I'll pull up the graphic in case people missed the show, but they cannot go into next season without adding a goalie.
Yeah, I think that most people can agree on. I think there are some people that are comfortable with Forsberg and Søgaard, but with the expectations of this season, I just don't think that's going to get it done, unfortunately. And look, the Ottawa Senators have, as you just mentioned, they've swung and missed on a bunch of goalies. It's about time their pro scouting hits on one that works. Now, Forsberg definitely is a great example of that. He kind of fell into their laps in the waivers, but I think this offseason, after the challenge of navigating what's going to happen with Alex DeBrincat, getting a goalie is the next priority for sure.
But with that, lessons are always learned from the teams that win. Vegas was on their 4th string goalie, give or take, Adin Hill, to win the cup. Like Sergei Bobrovsky, yeah, he was paid like an elite goalie, but he lost his job at different times this year, even so much so that Alex Lyon got them to the playoffs. Do you think that changes how the Sens approach this?
I don't think so, because I think the Senators are kind of stuck in a weird spot where they can't go full Bobrovsky They can't get a goalie that's making like $6+ million. It just doesn't fit in the budget. And they tried the goalie carousel last year. And by tried, I mean they had to use a goalie carousel because of injuries. And that didn't exactly work out for them either. So I think they're going to want to, at least in my opinion, and we'll get into this, but I think the direction for the Ottawa Senators is going to be a tandem 1A, 1B type goalie situation.
With Anton Forsberg in the second of a 3-year contract, making $2.75 million. And as I mentioned, here's the graphic from yesterday if you're watching on YouTube. If not, it just shows the stats from last season. Right now, the Sens organization includes Anton Forsberg on a 1-way contract, Mads Søgaard and Levi Meriläinen on 2-way contracts, and then RFAs Kevin Mandolese and Dylan Ferguson. The UFAs that we don't expect to be back are Cam Talbot and Antoine Bibeau as well. So those are this is how your situation is looking in the crease for the Ottawa Senators right now. And we talked yesterday on the show in length about Mandolese and Dylan Ferguson and the benefits of either bringing back both, one, or none. Go listen to yesterday's show and check that out when you're done with today. But Pilsy, it's time to get to the guys you're targeting this summer for the Ottawa Senators. Before we get to the specific names, are you more so looking at trade or free agency?
I think ultimately trade would be the best option because then you can get a goalie that has a bit of contract and a couple of years left on his deal, which my number one guy does have. But realistically, Ross, it's no secret, but teams that have good goalies on good deals don't want to trade them.
What?
Yeah, I know. Imagine that. So I think we're going to have to take a bigger look at the UFA market, which surprisingly, there's actually a decent amount of options UFA, even though that's not my preferred route because you're probably going to have to overpay these guys, but you gotta look somewhere. And I think the UFAs, there are some good options.
Are we going to lead to some suspense or should we pull up the graphic right away? Do you want to build up and maybe go our 5th pick, our 4th pick, our 3rd pick, or do you want to lead strong and just give them your first one and we'll pull up the graphic for our top 5?
Let's start with each of our first and then let's pull up the graphic. How do you like that?
I love it.
So since I already alluded to mine, my number one pick for the Ottawa Senators, my number one target.
Drum roll, please.
I'm going UC Saros. That's probably not a shock to many people as he's got 2 years left at $5 million, $5 million this year, $5 million next year. That's a very good contract for UC Saros. And I like Saros because he defies all odds. He's a short goalie in a world where goalies under 6'2" are considered undersized. And he's, I believe, 5'11"?
Yes.
Somewhere around there.
One of only, I want to say 3, if not 4 goalies in the National Hockey League who are under 6 feet tall.
And he's had a couple times where he's kind of ruined the Predators. I don't want to say rebuild, but he's put them into playoff contention when that wasn't really their plan. That's how good of a goalie he is. And I just think the Nashville Predators are looking to kind of turn the page. Barry Trotz, I think, is going to focus more on rebuilding. You don't need a goalie that's as good as Saros if you're going to go that route. And with 2 years left to $5 million, that is a great trade candidate for them. And I think if the Ottawa Senators are going to acquire him, they're probably going to have to use assets that they get if and when they trade Alex DeBrincat to do that deal.
And I mean, the Predators are hosting the draft.
Yes.
And you know that the team that hosts the draft always wants
call.
to take a big swing. They already have 2 first-round picks. They got one for the Matthias Ekholm trade from the Edmonton Oilers, but could potential return, like you said, with DeBrincat. If it's all picks and prospects, you just flip that for Saros. It's not going to be cheap. It's going to be extremely expensive for a guy who's consistently proven that he is one of the league's best goalies. Pilsy, little trivia. Who are the 3 goalies right now in the NHL under 6 feet tall?
Okay, well, I'm going to go with UC Saros.
Okay, ding, ding, ding.
Start with that one.
It's going to be tough. This
is Stalock under?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Lord knows I've seen him play last year. And I'm not going to bore the listeners to death. I don't know the third one.
Yaroslav Halak.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Is the third. So those are the only goalies under 6 feet. So it's a select few, but guys who have been small their whole life, like we keep saying in the draft profiles. It's not like all of a sudden they're like, oh, I got to play differently today. The net's looking a little bigger behind me. No,
you guys expand these nets back here.
Yeah, no doubt. But with UC Saros, I'm right on board with you. I think that would be the ideal candidate with 2 years left on his deal at $5 million. Like, that's a bargain price for a goalie who's going to give you consistent efforts. And if the Sens are going to use their pro scouting style of, oh, wow, this guy did well against us, a la Michael Bodker, among others, where I think Duclair had a few huge games as well. He got a shutout in Ottawa last year and was the main reason why Nashville got a 3-0 win in January in the nation's capital. Saros brings consistency, and he brings a workhorse mentality. He's a goalie who's going to play games, and he's going to demand the net. He's one of, I'd say, 5 elite goalies that you can count on year in and year out to play a ton of games and make a ton of saves above expected. Played 64 games last year, 67 the year before. So you're getting a bona fide stud goalie. Last year he was 3rd in Vezina voting. He's up for the award. I want to say he's up for the award again. Is he nominated?
I'm not sure. I forget the Vezinas, to be honest.
Anyways, doesn't matter. It's going to be actually, you know what? I don't think it's a runaway. Is it a runaway this year for the Vezina? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I would probably give it to Hellebuck.
He's
Ullmark. Yeah.
It's Ullmark, Sorokin, and Hellebuck are the 3 nominees. So
Ullmark should get that one.
He'll probably be 4th. I bet you if Nashville had snuck into the playoffs over Winnipeg, it would have been Saros instead of Hellebuck. But
could be.
They're right there. Those 3 are all deserving, or 4 if you bring in Saros. So I went a different way, but of course I would love UC Saros. I went with Jeremy Swayman because he's got that ceiling left where you're like, okay, he's 24 years old. He's been through the rigors. He's been through a season where he's been able to watch a historic team and be a part of it. It's not like he didn't play at all. He played 37 games, right? And he started 39 games last year. It's not like you're banking on a guy with 0 experience. He's got 88 NHL games under his belt, a .920 save percentage. He was 5th in Rookie of the Year last year, won the Jennings with Linus Ullmark this year. Like, I just think that he's got the athleticism. He's got the drive. He's got the, I don't want to say pedigree per se, but he's got the ability to shut down the game. I don't know if it's a team first thing with him with the Bruins. It's hard to judge that, but I think the sample size is big enough that I would bet on Jeremy Swayman. And the problem or difficulty that you run into here is it's the same situation when they acquired Matt Murray, where he's like, oh, he doesn't have 2 cups, but you get him. And then he's like, oh, you wanted me that bad? You traded for my RFA rights. Well, now my value, my asking price can be a little bit higher. Do you agree that could be a part of it for him?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think very often the teams have leverage with the RFA, but I think this is a spot where Jeremy Swayman could have a decent amount of leverage with his RFA.
And it didn't just pop up for him in the NHL. Great stats. His last year at the University of Maine, he had a .939 save percentage, .919 the year before, .921 as a freshman. So everywhere this guy's been, he's been elite. He's an Alaskan too. Hey, that's a little rare. Wouldn't be the first to play for the Sens. Scott Gomez, Nate Thompson. Hey,
nice.
Come home, Alaska. But I just love what Jeremy Swayman brings, and kind of the gamer mentality it seems that he brings in every game, except for the Sens home opener thing. But outside of that, I think he's a stud goalie, and I think he'd be a huge help in the crease for the Senators. And he fits the age group, right? He's the same age as Brady. Fits that age group. They could all grow together. If you could get Swayman and sign him to a 6-year deal at $5 million or less, I would be in on it. I know you're gun shy. I know you're gun shy.
I'm not signing any goalie for more than 4 years.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I just got excited.
Let's pull up the rest of the list here.
Should we?
Yeah.
I'd still do it though, Pills.
All right.
So the rest of your list, you have Swayman too. So you're in on Swayman.
Yes, I like Swayman. I believe in him. I think the age is great. I think the sample size is good enough. So he's my number 2.
And then at number 3.
I've got Frederik Andersen here. Now, I'm sure probably some Sens fans are tossing up their hands, but this is a guy that he can play a solid half a season. He's going to put up decent numbers. He's been very consistent the last couple of years. And I know there's that narrative that he's a choke artist. He's Freddie Aleem in the playoffs, but I think that's overblown by sour Leafs fans. If you actually look at his playoff numbers, they're not that bad. In fact, I would say they're actually pretty good considering.
That's also Patty Aleem. Patty Aleem's playoff numbers for his career are good. It's just he's let in a few stinkers in game 7s, and that's what you remember.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's totally fair. So, well, I mean, other than he had one bad playoffs with the Leafs, but the Leafs they sealed their own fate there. His last couple playoffs have been good, and I just think this is a guy. He's 33 years old, and you can probably get him on a 2-3 year deal at a reasonable amount, and I think he can help Forsberg, and they can be a nice tandem.
He was 4th in Vezina voting last year. Like, this is a good goalie.
Yeah,
Good goalie. He's been top 5 in Vezina voting twice, top 10 3 times. And he just brings stability, right? Now, there is a bit of injury history with him where he only played 34 games this past year, 51 the year before, 23 the year before that. So there is some extra miles on his tires. I have him at 4 on my list. I have Jonas Korpisalo at 3. Now, the series against Edmonton left a bit of a sour taste in my mouth. He got lit up in a few of those last games, but overall, since coming to LA, he showed that he can be an elite NHL goalie. His numbers since coming to Los Angeles were ridiculous. Now, LA, I think, has their sights set even higher. Connor Hellebuyck, who isn't on our list because I just think it's unrealistic. And now Elliot Friedman reporting that he's looking for a contract north of $9.5 million.
Yep.
That's just not going to work here in Ottawa. So I don't even have him on the list, but I have Jonas Korpisalo at number 3. Freddie Anderson at number 4.
And just one more thing about Freddie Anderson while we're on him on your list. I think what a great mentor for Mads Søgaard, right? Another big Dane. I'm pretty sure Søgaard even said that's a goalie he's looked up to, not physically, but in standards of NHL goalies. So I think that would be a great mentorship for Søgaard as well.
Well, yeah, Freddie Anderson's still 6'4", though, not like he's a spring chicken or anything. So when you're looking at, they did one of those like classic center ice photos when they played against each other in warmups. But yeah, I wouldn't hate it. I really wouldn't hate it, but you'd have to be a lot lighter on term with Freddie Anderson.
For sure. And I mean, he's 33, so I'm not sure what kind of term he would command.
And then I've got John Gibson. I don't really need to say too much about him. I think he's been overworked in Anaheim. He's clearly a talented goalie. He's shown it in the past, but I also don't think he's waiving his no trade clause to come here. But it's basically a 4-horse race for me. And I didn't want to just copy you with Adin Hill, but I wouldn't hate that. However, I believe Adin Hill is going to get that Stanley Cup overpayment this summer and could come back to earth next year. If he doesn't know what to do with his hands at a parade, who knows if he's going to forget what to do with his hands on the ice. I say jokingly, but you've got Adin Hill at number 5 and Sergei Varlamov? Semyon. Sorry. I knew it was an S.
Semyon Varlamov, is my number 4. Now, the thing with Varlamov is this would have to be a 1-year deal. He's up there in age. I think he's 35 years old, but this is another goalie that's consistent. And I would like a goalie tandem of Varlamov and Anton Forsberg, but I just think you might be getting into Cam Talbot territory here where it's a similar thing as Talbot. He looked good the year before. He's older and then he runs into injury trouble and then you're kind of screwed. So that's a bit of a risky approach, but if you just do it for 1 year as a stopgap to try to figure it out next year, maybe that's what you go for.
Let us know in the comments who you want to see the Ottawa Senators look to in the crease next season. Or are you cool with Forsberg and Søgaard? We want to hear from you. So let us know in the comments or on Twitter at Sens Central, on Instagram, lockedon.senators. We are exactly 1 week away from the National Hockey League draft. The profiles continue next. You're listening to Locked On Senators.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Guys, it's baseball season now. So if you guys are watching the Jays, trying to get your bets in, there's no better place to do it than at the FanDuel app. And if you're a new customer, well, I got good news for you. There's a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. You heard that right, $1,000. So just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. You guys know I've said it. It's my favorite sports betting app to use by far. And FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a bigger chance at a bigger payout with same game parlays. So don't miss your chance to get on to the no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Owl & Co. Grooming. Oh, I think I'm getting better at that. The owl noise over at Owl and what if I? Is that?
That's a new twist. Good, I like it.
Check out our friends at Owl & Co Grooming. And because you're a listener of Locked On Senators, you can get a 15% deal by using the code Senators15. That's Owl & Co Grooming, started by our friend Chris. And it's just a crazy thought, isn't it? Creating a grooming routine that doesn't suck. Go check them out. Hair tonic, sea salt sprays, utility balms. It's versatility at its finest. It's all made in small batches with natural ingredients. So you can go check them out and use shea butter and coconut oil. All these great things that don't create blemishes and are easy for your skin to take in. So go outside your comfort zone. Start with these products each and every morning, and you'll see that creating a grooming routine can actually be something that you look forward to. Owl & Co Grooming is all about helping you find this, and go to owlandcogrooming.com. Find them on Instagram, Owl & Co Grooming. And because you're Locked On Senators listener, you get 15% off. Senators 15 at checkout, 15% off at owlandcogrooming.com. All right, Pillsy. Got a little Sens news, but we're going to save that for the end of the show. Stay tuned for that because, Pillsy, it is draft season all the time right now. And, oh, my goodness, the rumor mill's in full swing. We'll have a rumor roundup tomorrow on Locked On Senators. But for now, coming in at number 39 on the Locked On Senators NHL Draft Rankings, it's about damn time that we had a tendie on this list. It's Michael Hrabel out of the Czech Republic and Omaha in the USHL.
Omaha. This is a goalie with huge size. I mean, you've got it on the right here, Ross, Ben Bishop-esque, and there's a reason for that. At a size of, or at least I've got him listed, Ross, at 6'6", 209 pounds. This is a goalie that size is not an issue, and the puck is going to hit him more often than not, just because of plain surface area that this kid has. But he's not just a big goalie out there. He's got good hockey smarts. He reads the play. And I found that he's very smooth in his butterfly. We'll get into more of that after you list off some of the stats and some of the scouts rankings, Ross.
In Omaha, he had 9 wins, 13 losses, and 4 overtime losses, which tells me maybe the team wasn't the
Ross,
best.
they were the second worst team in the USHL.
Yeah. And sometimes that's good for a goalie.
Yep.
You think back of Ray Emery when he was playing junior C in the worst team in Ontario, but he's getting 100 shots a game, and that can help a goalie's development as long as you don't get too down on yourself if you do let in a few goals. Had a .908 save percentage, a 2.86 goals against, 3 shutouts as well. He's committed to the University of Massachusetts, which is really kind of up and coming, and he's going to play with a Sens prospect next season, a guy who's been on our show as well. Cam O'Neill will be one of his teammates at UMass next year under former Sens assistant coach Greg Hrabal, who's the head coach there. Obviously, the program has just continued to rise since Cale Makar stepped foot on campus back a few years ago. He's a left-catching goalie, and he's ranked in the first round by Craig Button, 26th overall on his list. Chris Peters has him at 35, but does say he's the top goalie on the board for him. Corey Prodman has him at 38, Elite Prospects at 54, and Scott Wheeler at 56. Wheeler, though, being the lowest on him, I should say the average is 41.8. But Scott Wheeler, I found very interesting what he said about Michael Hrabel, where he's like, man, the upside's hard to ignore, and a team is going to be higher on him than this ranking. So he acknowledges that despite being 56 on his list, if you're taking him higher, don't be scared because there's a ton of upside with this goalie.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ross, when I was watching his highlights for big goalies, the first thing I look for is how do they play down low? Because a lot of these big goalies, you know, you're not going to beat them upstairs. That's where a big bulk of their shoulders, and they're able to cover that, glove, blocker, etc. So how can he stop the puck down low? This guy is a pure butterfly goalie. There's no stand-up. There's no hybrid. He's getting into that butterfly every single time. So he's covering down low. And then what I found I really liked about Michael Hrabel is that he's able to smoothly push across in his butterfly and even adjust. Like when there's a tip, a deflection, or let's say he makes the pad save and it kicks out to the other side of the crease, he's not panicking. He's smoothly getting over, staying upright, having good position, and he's able to make those second saves, which on a team like the Omaha Lancers, he was making second and third saves quite often. So I really think that this is a goalie that you can see a lot of potential, and there's good reasons why a lot of the scouts in our list have him ranked as one of the top goalies in this draft.
Exactly. There's just so much to like about the makeup, all the tools that you could even hope for a guy who at the start of the season, people were just kind of curious about him. Nobody had a whole lot of idea of maybe where he would land, what kind of upside there was. And this year, playing on such a bad team, he was able to show, no, there's a ton to like about what Michael Hrabel brings. At the World Under-18s as well, he was just peppered with shots and was unbelievable. A .920 save percentage for him, despite, like, when your goals against average is over 3, but you're still making
920, yeah.
Saves, that's pretty impressive in itself. And I think it speaks for kind of the Craig Anderson theory, where when you're getting more shots, it gets you engaged into the game more.
Yep.
He probably faced more shots than any goalie in this draft class this past year.
It's quite possible, yeah. And that's the thing is, some goalies need that. Ross, personally, in my House League All-Star days, I was very comfortable getting a lot of shots. And I found when I wasn't getting shots, I would let in a bad goal easily because I wasn't in the game. And some goalies like that. Now, Michael Hrabel in EP's quotes, he even said that he is working on adjusting to North American ice. I know maybe people that aren't goalies are like, what? The crease is the same size, net's the same size. What's the difference? How does it make a difference? There is a big difference in how you play on the smaller ice, just because the plays happen so much faster. Pucks that go to the front of the net are so much more. There's more scrambling going on. Those areas are so much more coveted. So it definitely does change things. And I think it's a great move for him to come from Czechia and start playing in North America as soon as possible.
Oh, I love the fact that he not only was like, hey, I'll come over for college. He's like, I'm going to come over and get involved before I have to step foot on a college campus. So I love that. And the fact that that he's been able to do this for multiple seasons is a huge bonus to how I see his next few years going. Like, again, there's no rush, and at UMass, like, they've got such a good program there. I'm sure that he'll be put in the proper situations. I'm not sure if he'll be the starter right away, but they've got a ton of talent coming back, 3 NHL drafted players right now. And I just think that, you know, he's going to get a chance to really cement himself as a guy who is a no doubt NHL goalie sooner rather than later. He's battling for the top spot for me, just because I'm probably egregiously high on Jacob Fowler that we did as a bonus. Yes. He's not in our top 50, but I'm absurdly high on him. And I understand that that's maybe a bit of a hot take by me, but Hrabel, if I'm being kind of rational, he's going to be the first goalie off the board. And there should be absolutely no reason to challenge that.
Now, only a few negatives I could find, Ross, is EP knocks him for, guess what? His skating, his skating speed. You know, when guys coming in on a breakaway and you're out past the crease, and then you got to skate backwards and time that so you properly close the gap as he comes closer to you. EP mentions that they don't love his timing and speed doing that backwards momentum, and sometimes he gets caught. The player gets around him a little much, and then you got a wide open cage. So that's something he's got to look at. Excuse me. And then Scott Wheeler mentions he'd like to see him improve his play with the puck. So that's something else that, you know, those are two big parts of goaltending. But as far as play goes down low, in tight, in front of the net, he excels, and he's a big goalie. I think he's going to figure out those two things. So small hindrances that are being nitpicked here with Hrabel.
Hey, pretty cool that as a 16-year-old in Czechia, he was playing for Sparta Prague, the team in the nation's capital where he's from, in Prague, and had a .936 save percentage in 4 games, playing against kids 3-4 years older than him. So I think he's going to be up for the challenge at the next step. And if your team just took him, especially if you don't have many goalies in the pipeline, you're going to be ecstatic that Michael Hrabel is part of your squad. For more draft coverage, head over to Locked On Senators on YouTube, where you'll have profiles for 70 different prospects heading into this year's NHL Draft. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up on the other side, a couple more prospects, and one that I'm super fired up about. I think a first-round talent is still on the board. That's next. You're listening to Locked On Senators. All right, Pillsy. Crazy to think we've already come this far. 39 plus the bonus ones that you can find exclusively on YouTube, all already in the books. And no doubt we're getting close. The draft's in a week today. So fired up to get to number 40. Coming in at number 40 on the Locked On Senators NHL Draft Rankings, we're going to the WHL. It's Cohen Zimmer. And man, this kid from Prince George, he can play.
Oh, yeah, big time. Prince George has a couple of studs on their team. I believe Riley Height is the other guy there. And these two put up big points over in Prince George. And you got to respect the skill here because Cohen Zimmer in 68 games, 41 goals, 48 assists for 89 points in 68 games. And he's a real dual threat type offensive player, Ross. He had 7 points in 10 playoff games, and he had a 32-point increase from his last season. And this kid has some pedigree in his younger years as he was drafted 4th overall in the WHL Bantam draft back in 2019.
So, an Alberta kid who's just dominated every level. How about in his U50? I always like looking sometimes at what they did in minor hockey.
It's wild sometimes.
Had to be such a joke for him. 76 points in 29 games. Must be nice in the Edmonton area. But okay, let's get back to present day. He's a guy who isn't afraid to get in the mix physically. I think that's the first thing that stood out to me. He's going to be hard on the forecheck. He's going to be able to, kind of be a bowling ball out there and run people over, get into open spots. He's over 200 pounds already. I think you're looking at a guy with a pro frame, and I think he's way higher than 40 on my list. I'll start with that. But 7 points in 10 playoff games. How do our scouts rank him? Well, Scott Wheeler has him at 31, Craig Button at 32. So they both agree that he's a first round talent. Elite Prospects has him at 40, right where we have him. Then Chris Peters has him at 50. Corey Prodman, shocker. I don't want to say out to lunch. It's just different. Outlier. Thank you. Outlier down at 65 on his list. That's a 3rd round pick, Pilsy. I don't see that from Cohen Zimmer. I just see a kid with a ton of talent, a ton of tools, and a lot to mold to make him the best he can be at the next level.
Yep, I like this kid a lot as well, Ross. Like I mentioned, he's a dual threat. He has an elite shot. His shot is so good. He's so creative with the puck on his stick. He's a great playmaker. He's very confident with his backhand, which I think is an underrated skill. And just a couple plays I watched. If you go on YouTube and you just look at, I think it's just titled Cohen Zimmer Top 5 Plays of the Season. And man, they're good ones. Like there was one where he draws 3 defenders towards him. Then he goes across the slot, Ross, and then just a nice, smooth backhand pass to his teammate who's all alone and he scores an easy goal. And then there was another one where he's behind the net. All 5 opponents are collapsed at the net. He goes around as if he's going to do a wraparound. So they tighten up and then he goes farther out and from a bad angle, like a terrible angle, backhand top shelf. All 5 players puck watching him and he gets a backhand bad angled shot top shelf for a goal. Like this kid, he finds ways to score goals, whether it's him scoring or setting up his teammates. Cohen Zimmer is a real threat offensively. I mean, he put up 40 plus goals and 40 plus assists. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah, and everything he does is at a high pace when he has the puck on his stick. Now, I think there's some questions when it comes to his skating when he's, back checking or what the case may be. But I think that he's just going to bring it each and every game. He's a gamer is how I describe him, and a guy where the upside is clear to me when you're getting a guy who shoots the puck all the time too. 226 shots this past season, 2nd on his team in Prince George and putting the puck in the net 41 times, 16 of those being on the power play. So almost half of his goal production was with the man advantage. But what I also noticed is he's not in just one spot on the power play. He can kind of cycle around and be in different situations. And that just goes to the dual threat aspect of his game. It works in so many areas. He's a shooter and he's physical, but he can also in the offensive zone create in different ways.
Yep. And I think I want to touch on the physicality, Ross, because EP really harped on that, saying he's a violent player, throwing hip checks. He's constantly making contact. He's the guy out there that if you're the defenseman on his opposite side, you're getting cross-checked in the back over and over. He's nudging you. He's shoving you. Like he's letting you know that Zimmer is on the ice. And I think for people that are dual threat offensive players, to have that physicality as part of your game just ups things and make you even more annoying and pest-like to play up against if you're going opposite on him on the ice.
What do you think the ceiling is for a player like Cohen Zimmer?
I think ceiling is a good second-line winger. I think he's going to be a middle six winger, but if he reaches his potential, I can see him being like a top-tier second-line winger. And
he's a right shot, right wing, and you're just going to get a guy who I think it's safe to assume he's going to play in the NHL, no matter what. Even if he's like a guy who gets, AHL top scoring minutes and is a call-up for a couple of years, and then he has to make the most out of those opportunities. But I think I think out of the guys in this range, he's a very good bet to get a very good chance to be an everyday NHLer.
He has those skills. The one thing, though, Ross, and reasons why some scouts have him lower on their list than you and I and maybe Scott Wheeler did, is the skating is not great. Like EP even goes as far to say, like, look, if he can't get his skating up to speed or up to par with the rest of prospects in this range, all his other skills are kind of go by the wayside because he's not going to be able to keep up with the game. So I don't think that his skating is that bad, but some scouts do. And I think that's something he's going to improve on because the rest of his game, offensively, at least, and physically, is really good. So I've got high hopes for Zimmer here. And I even would put him in a late first round pick, Ross.
Me too. But if he does slip to the second, give me Arizona because they have so many good playmaking centermen in their system. And even if they add another one at 6 or 12, I just think as well, like you're going to be able to build kind of different positions at that point when you have as many picks as Arizona. I just think there would be a really good fit for him, and being able to play behind a Dylan Guenther, who also is that dual threat and can shoot and can hit and do all that. I just think Cohen Zimmer's great, and he could be a real breakout candidate in the WHL. A little bit of a hot take. I think he might be on Team Canada at the World Juniors next year. So look out for that for Cohen Zimmer. If your team just drafted them, you could do a heck of a lot worse than Cohen Zimmer. For more draft coverage, head over to Locked On Senators on YouTube. We've got 70 different profiles for you. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every single day. All right, coming in at number 41 on our Locked On Senators NHL draft rankings, it's Anton Wahlberg from Malmo in the Swedish league. He played primarily in the J20 league, but he showed some raw skill that has given a high upside projection that teams are going to fall in love with.
Yeah, this kid is certainly talented. Wahlberg, he spent some time in the SHL, which if you guys follow along, we really highlight because it's a tough thing to do as a young player. He had 4 points in 17 SHL games. But in the J20, where he spent most of his time, 32 games, 14 goals, 13 assists for 27 points. So pretty good pace there. What I really liked about Wahlberg, Ross, is he really attacks on the forecheck. Like I saw 3 or 4 highlights of him. The defenseman is coming out his own end, the opponent's defenseman, kind of lackadaisical, checking for plays, who's open. There's a line change. I'll just kind of hang out for a bit. And boom, Wahlberg is on his case, hounding him for that puck. And more often than not, he steals it from them. And then he's got himself a mini breakaway. And then he's even got the hands to make something of that breakaway and make a goalie look silly with some really nice dekes in tight. So I think Anton Wahlberg is going to be one of those guys that coaches are going to love him because he's an aggressive forechecker that creates something out of nothing plays.
Listed as a centerman right now, left shot. I could see him as a winger at the NHL level if and when he does make the jump there. 6'3", 194 right now. And Craig Button has him as a first-round talent, 29th on Craig Button's list. Corey Pronman has him at 33. Chris Peters at 42. Elite Prospects at 60. And Scott Wheeler all the way down at 70, the lowest on this list. And based on the way I know Wheeler and Elite Prospects go with it, I think it's safe to assume skating might be something that he needs to work on to make it to the next level.
I didn't think his skating was that bad, and I'm just looking to see what they gave him of skating. They gave him a 5 skating, so average skating. Average. Yeah. So I thought his straight line speed, like when I mentioned, when he's really making an effort to pressure the opponent's defender, I thought he did a great job, and he's a good net front presence as well. Like he did a really good job in the SHL highlights I saw of him of just making it a pain for defensemen to try to box him out. And what you're doing when you're doing that as well is you're distracting the goalies. Like a goalie trying to see a shot from the point when there's two guys in front of him just having an absolute battle, it's hard to stay focused, and you got to decide, do I look to the right of them? Do I look to the left? Do I look under? Do I look over? And then by the time you're figuring out as a goalie where you're going to look to see the shot, it might already be past you. And I thought Wahlberg did a good job of getting a stick on it and tipping point shots in as well. So I think when you got a guy that can attack on the forecheck and is a good net front presence, there's some good skills there that NHL scouts will like.
He's also a very late birthday, July 4th. So he's got a ton of room to grow, still 17 years old, and he's signed in the SHL for another season. I think he should stay over probably an extra year after that. Was good at the World under 18s with 6 points in 7 games, got kicked out of the game against Canada, which it just seemed like a gong show of a game. I know every time we pull it up, I think Sandin Palika got tossed from that game and a few others, but he was a big part of that Sweden game, that 8-0 win. They routed Canada. He had 3 points there. And the one thing I want to see a little less of is there's a few games where he's got 6 penalty minutes, which 3 minor penalties in a game. I'd like to kind of stay away from that if you're looking at a guy who projects to be probably a bottom 6 forward at the National Hockey League level. But still, there's so much skill. And I like what Chris Peters said about him, saying in multiple viewings this season, my eyes just kept gravitating towards him because he just has good puck touch, makes plays. But Jimmy Hamlin with Elite Prospect says there's always good moments with Wahlberg, but the all-around pattern is that he has trouble reading time and space, which to me is something that a good coach can be able to fix.
Yeah, and that's interesting, Ross, because that's going to be even more difficult, or I shouldn't say more difficult, but he's going to have to adjust even more when he comes to North America, right? If he's already having trouble making those reads on big ice, how's that going to affect him on a smaller ice surface?
Totally, and that's why the projection for him is still a bit fuzzy. I think a project rather than a projectable is where he's at, because you're going to need to spend time with him, with skills coaches. And I think you just see the tools, right? You see all the tools necessary, the size, the frame, the explosiveness, and the ability that he's fearless to take the puck to the middle of the ice and cut to the net and do all these things that skill players do. So I know that he's got a lot of skill. He lit up his own age group in Sweden. I want to see him do it at the SHL level for probably 2, if not 3 years, come over to the AHL, play a year or 2 in the American Hockey League, and then jump up. So it's going to be a long path, I think, but a very high upside swing, maybe a Nashville second-round pick, potentially, something like that. I know they've got a couple, right? They've got Winnipeg's for the Nino Niederreiter deal as well. This could be one of those high upside picks that a team just drools over early in the second round. But if he goes past 40, like where we have him at 41, this is definitely a home run swing type pick.
Yeah, maybe. It depends on how scouts look at it, Ross. I've got him going in the middle of the second round here. I don't know. For me, there's just nothing that really pops out about Anton Wahlberg. I got him at 3.5 stars. I think he's going to be a nice prospect, but he doesn't jump off the page for me.
Yeah, it's a bit of a lack of vision. Decision making but again, that's why I'm still high on him, is those are things that can be coachable. Whereas the compete, that's not coachable. Above average for sure for him, if not high end, and just some other tools that I'm really drawn to. So I like him a little bit more than you. And when we do our head-to-head comparisons of
I'm excited for that
at the end of it. So stay tuned for that. It's going to get contentious here as we lead up to the National Hockey League draft. But Anton Wahlberg from Malmo comes in at 41. Little trivia. We'll leave it for the listeners, though. Who's the last player the Senators drafted out of Malmo, Sweden?
Yeah, we already did this off air, so I don't want to fake a trivia question here. I do know the answer, but it's an interesting one.
We gave enough time, so you can act smart and say it.
No, I'm not going to say it. It's going to be a surprise.
You're just not going to say it? Well, nope. How about who's the first player they drafted out of Malmo then?
Ooh.
No, never played a game in the NHL. There's no way you get it.
Okay, I was going to say no chance.
Johan Bjork was never expected. Eric Engstrand, the only member of the 2020 draft who did not sign a contract, was drafted out of Malmo, but a couple of years earlier. So that is Anton Wahlberg coming in at 41 on the Locked On Senators NHL Draft Rankings. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Pilsy, any final thoughts from you on today's show?
Final thoughts for me just quickly is the NHL Network tweeted out notable class of 2023 candidates for the Hockey Hall of Fame. I believe 4 players get inducted, Ross. I'm going to go quickly with my picks here, and I'll get your reaction. I think Henrik Lundqvist, I think he's going to be a first ballot guy. I know maybe the accolades aren't there, but this guy was a top goalie pretty much
Olympic gold.
Over a decade. Yeah, Olympic gold. Definitely got to put that in there. Alexander Mogilny, when he was at his best, he was one of the best scoring wingers in the NHL. Keith Tkachuk, it's an absolute joke that he isn't in the Hall of Fame already.
500 goals.
Yeah, you got to get him in there. That's simple.
Somebody, I wish I could give it credit. I saw it on Twitter. Somebody said maybe he should go in as a builder with what Matthew and Brady are doing.
No, honestly, it's not that crazy of a take. And then, you know what? I know there's some politics going on, but Jeremy Roenick is such a legendary player. We can't let off-ice politics of that get in the way. So I'm going JR as well. So a lot of American players there. Well, no, 2.
Well, McGillney's the biggest snub going so far.
Yeah.
Another name I'll throw at you, Rod Brindamore.
Yep.
In the mix.
But I don't think he gets in ahead of those guys. That's the only thing. Yeah.
There. No, it'll be really interesting, but it is nice as a Senators fan to sit back, relax. And if you want to go through the day of emotions, we tweeted out the link to our episode when Alfie got in the Hall of Fame. We put that out on Twitter at Sens Central yesterday. I'm still banging the table for Brian Murray to be in as a builder.
Absolutely.
I think it's long overdue. Unfortunately, I feel like in a sense, him leaving Anaheim and then losing to them, like that would have been his cup. That would have been kind of what really put an exclamation mark on him being in. David Poile being on the Hall of Fame committee, though, and he gave him his first job. And, Brian Burke getting the accolades of his built roster with the Perrys and Getzlaffs of the world, and getting Rob Niedermayer, because without Rob Niedermayer, they don't get Scott Niedermayer. And does any of that happen? Who knows? But Brian Murray deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. But I'm not gonna be crying or anything if he doesn't get in this year. But we will still bring it up every year that Brian Murray needs to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yes, as is our duty as Sens fans.
Yes, and my final thoughts. Yes, the Senators are going out east once again. Their first preseason game has been scheduled. It's against the Florida Panthers, which is kind of strange. I feel like they don't really like making Florida go to Cape Breton seems strange, but they're going to Cape Breton. They're going to Sydney, Nova Scotia. And if you have a weekend free, it's October 1st.
Yep.
That time of year in Cape Breton is all time.
Okay.
It's one of the best places on earth. The Cabot Trail, get up there for a weekend, go see the Sens. I'm sure Igor's fired up. He'll get to hopefully be in that game and play in his old barn. Kevin Mandolese, Drake Batherson.
Yep.
Got a ton. So we tweeted out. We got the retweet already from Gerard Shaw, the president of the Cape Breton Eagles. Absolute beauty, great guy, just great people out there. Salt of the earth. So shout out to all the great East Coast Sens fans who I know are out there listening and are going to be fired up to know that they get back. I tweeted out at Sens Central the other day. I was like, show me the oldest photo on your phone. And mine was actually from a preseason game when I was living in Halifax. I went out to St. John's, Newfoundland, Mile 1 Center, and got to see them play. I think it was against Carolina, another kind of random choice of team to go out there. But super cool atmosphere. And for those towns that don't get to experience NHL hockey all the time, those Kraft Hockeyville games really are super special.
Definitely. Yeah, I love it. I think it's a great idea.
All right. Tomorrow, what did we say tomorrow? We're going to get something contentious, aren't we?
I forget what we have on tomorrow.
Damn it. We mentioned
Tune in to find out
tomorrow, but we're also going to get a little deeper into our off-season Senators model. We still owe the people out there, the show for fans by fans. We owe everyone a cap update because we're going to have to figure out. It's just that the Brinket, it's putting such a, you're either going to have 9 million or you're going to have nada.
Yeah.
You're really going to have something to play with, but we will before the draft. So in the next week, we will do a cap structure update for the Ottawa Senators going into this offseason. But for today, we say goodbye. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.